What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are taking a look at Gardevoir EX. Now, Gardevoir EX has been a deck that has been a menace when it comes to the meta, and it still is as good as ever. Today we are taking a look at Tord's second place World Championships list. It's a really good deck. So if you're not sure what Gardevoir EX does, once during your turn, you may attach a basic psychic energy from your discard pile to one of your psychic Pokemon. And if you do, you put 2 damage counters on it, and you can only put enough to where your Pokemon won't be knocked out. So, being paired with that, we do have the Zacian V, which does 60 plus 30 for each psychic energy, so you can max out at 390 damage if you accelerate 11 energy. Or I'm sorry, if you accelerate 10 energy, put yourself at 200, you're at 300 damage, and then you have the 60. So you max out at 360. And then we also have the Gardevoir with Shining Arcana. Brainwave, it does the same thing as the Zacian, 60 plus 30. So this means that you are able to accelerate a bunch of energy, big damage output, and Shining Arcana mixed with the Kirlia means that you have ability to draw a ton of cards, which means Iono does not hurt you as much. We are playing Lost Vacuum in order to get through that pesky path to the peak, which does counter us quite a bit. Playing 3 Iono just for the late game scenarios. Then we have Artisan as well as Collapse Stadium. So as always, the deck list will be posted right here just so you guys have a full view. And if you want to import the deck list will be in the description. You can just copy and paste that. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. If you do enjoy it, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the gameplay. Later. Alrighty guys, so we are into game 1 with Gardevoir. Going to see exactly what we can do in this type of matchup. My opponent did call heads, so they are able to win the coin flip. Bit unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. So my opponent will go first. Not too terrible. We do have access to playing a supporter. So, it means that we have the chance to actually set up, get a decent board. Hopefully starting with that VIP pass. Unfortunately, we don't have access to it, but what we do have access to is Fog Crystal, Level Ball, and Mew. So we do actually have quite a bit of setup that we can do. And we are playing against Mew, so this is going to be similar to that World Championships Finals. So the big idea with this, just be behind in prizes, take a big knockout with a Gardevoir, and go from there. So my opponent does hit heads on the Cramomatic. And if my opponent can get something like Path to the Peak out, will it be a bit unfortunate for us as we are going to be relying heavily on the Greninja to discard. So my opponent does get a very decent start, having access to that Feather Ball, 2 of the Forest Seal Stones on the Genesect. Can we take a minute to appreciate this Genesect art? It is just so beautiful. So what our game plan is next turn, we're going to Level Ball for Mew, Fog Crystal, and then we're going to use Mew, search the top of our deck, see exactly what we can get going, because we need to try and get as many Ralts out as possible in order to benefit from everything. So my opponent is using that Forest Seal Stone already. Gonna see exactly what they're gonna grab. Probably gonna grab another Battle VIP pass to grab something like a 3rd Genesect. So there's the 3rd Genesect going down, attaching, and my opponent is gonna be able to draw a lot of cards this turn. So it's important that we try and get down as many Ralts as possible, because we are going to need to try to evolve, get as many cards going as possible. So this is a matchup that I am far familiar with, as I did actually play against Vance Kelly at Fresno Regionals and lost to him for my winning in. So my opponent searching for the Mew VMAX. So let's see what my opponent can do. My opponent is playing Solitaire at this point, so we do draw the rare candy, which means we do have access to Gardevoir next turn. So we will use that level ball, checking our prizes. We do have a Kirlia prized, unfortunately, so it's something that we are going to have to keep in mind. We are going to grab the Ralts. We do have one in hand as well, so we do have access next turn. Hopefully hitting a Battle VIP pass off of this Mysterious Tail. And just like that, we actually do. So Battle VIP pass means that we can grab the Greninja as well as our third Ralts. So we have a Ralts as well as a Kirlia prized. So definitely one thing we're going to have to keep in mind. And we do actually draw into a lot of good for the next turn. Means that we have access to Kirlia, we have Rare Candy Gardevoir. And depending on what my opponent does, we could have a big turn. So here's my opponent getting those 2 Mew VMAXs out. We are going to be in a bit of an awkward position. My opponent does use Ultra Ball into that Fusion Strike system, potentially getting a path to the peak. They got rid of one, so I don't think another one is coming, but we will figure that out in the meantime. Unfortunately, what I think we're going to have to do is Rare Candy into the Shining Arcana Gardevoir and go from there. So my opponent, drawing until they have 6. My opponent's just playing Solitaire at this point, using Switch. Getting that Mew VMAX in the active, going to be able to use that Max Miracle attack. Meaning that, oh, there is a boss's order, so my opponent is going for one of the Ralts. Very unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. If he lost zones it, we're going to be in a bit of trouble, but it's nothing that's too terrible. What we're going to do next turn in order to see more cards is we are going to promote the Mew. We're going to evolve into Kirlia, evolve into the Shining Arcana, and go from there. The reason for the Shining Arcana is because the Kirlia can evolve into the Gardevoir EX here, which means that we can have access to a Zacian in order to take a KO. And if my math's right, my opponent should be behind on prizes by then, because they take 1, then they take 2, they're at 2, we take 3, so we'll be behind, which means that we do have access to the Shining Arcana Gardevoir. So here, we're just gonna do the fun. We're gonna use Refinement, getting rid of that useless Battle VIP pass now, drawing Professor's Research. So we will use the Mysterious Tail. Mysterious Tail can grab the Fog Crystal. Fog Crystal, we can look at quite a bit more cards. So use the Fog Crystal, get the energy, use the concealed cards. And then from here, we can go the Rare Candy into the Gardevoir. Gardevoir can use that Shining Arcana. So we do get a energy. I'm going to attach it to the Gardevoir so that way my opponent feels the need to go from there. My opponent does need boss again. So I think what we're going to do here is we'll get rid of the Psychic Energy and the Manaphy. And then we can actually grab the Zacian just to set up the Zacian line of play. That way my opponent can't really do too much. Now my opponent has some options on what he wants to go for. My opponent wants to go for the Zacian. They can, but it leaves the energy open for Gardevoir. My opponent wants to go for the Kirlia. That's fine. Our worst bet would be going for the Kirlia, but at the same time, my opponent has to find boss. My opponent already used his V-Star, so we should be okay. So there's an escape rope. The escape rope. What do I want to feed my opponent? We're gonna feed my opponent the Greninja. We have 4 energy in the discard, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we do need 9 energy in total. So we will be able to get 9 energy onto the Gardevoir, or onto this Gardevoir using the reversal energy. So be in a good spot. We'll be able to take 3 prizes, go from there. So my opponent draws 1. Elesa Sparkle going down. The only issue is that my opponent does have access to 1,000,001 things. So my opponent's using the Radiant Greninja. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to use the Mew and hope to find an Ultra Ball in order to grab Lumineon. And Lumineon can grab us the boss to KO one of the Mews. So my opponent's going to use the Melodious Echo, hitting for 210 damage. And it's going to be up to us to find a way to hit that big damage this coming turn. So we do get the boss's orders. We are behind, but we'll go to 3. But we should be okay. So what we can do is we'll use the Shining Arcana first, just in case we do get any energy, and we don't unfortunately get energy, so we'll use the Mysterious Tail. Mysterious Tail grabs the level ball. Fortunately, not going to do us too much good. We'll use the Refinement. Refinement will get rid of the level ball. We can't actually use the Cresselia. So we actually will get rid of the level ball right now, and we do get Lumineon as well as another boss's orders. So we only have 8 energy, which means we're hitting for 300 damage. Not enough to do anything that's quite relevant. This is what we're gonna have to do. So we're gonna have to evolve into the Gardevoir, and then we're gonna have to Psychic Embrace to the Mew. Going to bench the Cresselia. We're gonna retreat into the Mew and just power up the Cresselia to take the knockout. So we have the 3 energy hitting for 110, and then my opponent has to find boss as well as a ton of power modifiers in order to KO the Gardevoir. Is there any supporters that I want to play this turn? I don't think so. We're going to use the level ball just to thin the deck. We do have access to that Super Rod potentially, hopefully finding it. But from here for right now, we're just going to use the Lunar Blast. And this actually makes our math a little bit better, because now taking 1 prize, we can take 1 prize and then KO the Mew, and then we just have to KO a Genesect after the fact. So my opponent is going to have to find, let's see. This is a bit awkward. My opponent is using that Lost Vacuum, going to thin their hand. Potentially taking a knockout. There's the 1 power tablet. There's the Fusion Strike System 4/1 card. There's the 4 Seal Stone. Gonna be able to draw 1 more card off of Fusion Strike System. So if my opponent is forced to KO the Cresselia, we're in a really good spot. We can take the knockout with Gardevoir, and then go Zacian into a Genesect. So there's the Lost City. So let's see what my opponent decides to do here. So just the Cross Fusion Strike. Potentially going to shuffle the Mew back in, just hitting for that 140. Not shuffling any Pokemon back in. So now what we're going to be able to do is promote the Gardevoir, and then we can actually use the Shining Arcana. I should have promoted the Zacian first, but we do actually luck out and we are able to attach to the Gardevoir. So what we can do now is we can attach the Reversal Energy reversal energy is active, and we do have access to that boss's orders as well. So we're going to attach the reversal. We're going to go Gardevoir. Gardevoir is going to be able to accelerate the 4 energy. So we are at 7, 8, 9 energy. And we can actually do a very big play right here. We can actually use the boss's orders to bring up this Mew, because this one has the cleansing gloves, and we can actually use that collapse stadium just to not allow my opponent to draw as much off of their Genesects, and if they get rid of one, then we're in an even better spot. And so we are hitting for that 330 damage. Nothing too relevant that we need to do now. Just hit for that 330, and then come next turn, we have the chance to take the game. Now, if my opponent does play a Path to the Peak, we are in a bit of an awkward spot, as we are going to have to search for the Path to the Peak, but again, it shouldn't be too bad. Regardless, if my opponent goes for the Max Miracle, we should be okay. So there goes my opponent, benching that Block Slider Ice Cube. Not going to be able to do too much. Only going to be able to do 40 damage, so and we do have access to boss's orders, as I mentioned before. So my opponent just goes for the Cross Fusion Strike. They're going to have to take a knockout on the Gardevoir. But with that being said, we do have 7, 8 energy. We might actually be able to just take a knockout on the Mew itself. So what we'll do is we'll just promote the Zacian. We will use that Psychic Embrace in order to accelerate enough energy. I believe we only need 5. Because 5 would be 120, or sorry, 5 would be 150 to 10. So we can actually take the knockout. So was detach 6. I meant to click done. And then from here, we have the 240. Bring up the Genesect. And then from here, we can hit for 240, taking our last 2 prizes and winning us the game. So that was game 1. With the matchup, it was really important to use the reversal energy on Gardevoir first. That way we could utilize being behind on prizes, and then when we became ahead on prizes or tied, we finished with Zacian. So that was game 1. Let's get right into game number 2. Alrighty, into game number 2. My opponent is flipping. They called it tails. They do flip heads, so we do have the option to go first. Seeing exactly what we can do with Gardevoir going first, considering last game we did go second. So both of us mulligan. Gives us a chance to see what my opponent is playing. My opponent is playing Miraidon, so they do have access to that Path to the Peak. A bit unfortunate, but hopefully this top deck can relive some of what we need. We get an Artisan. Artisan, not a bad stadium for us to get by any means. Means that we can start getting out some of the cards that we may need. Taking a look at what's prized. We do have access to all of our Ralts. We do have all 3 Kirlias, all 4 Kirlias. A boss's orders is in our hand, so we do have one of those fog crystals prized. We do have a rare candy prized. Super odd is in the deck, 9. So we have 1 energy prize, so not looking too bad at all. What I'm gonna do now, we're gonna level ball just to get the 3rd Ralts out, Just because if I do happen to draw an energy next turn, I can actually get access to the Mirage Step Kirlia. And I believe my opponent is probably going to take a knockout on a Ralts here, so we need to be able to set up as much as possible. Getting that Raichu down, using the Artisan for themselves, going to be able to get out the Mareep, and we're going to have to make sure that we can steamroll as much as we need to. We're going to be taking 2 prizes at a time. My opponent going to be taking 1 prize at a time, but they can take prizes very fast, so we're going to have to make sure that we can actually do what we need to do. So there's the Iono, getting rid of our level ball. Again, nothing too bad. My opponent can't set up, so we are good. And looking at this hand is atrocious. We do have access to Iono. We do actually have access to Psychic Energy, so we could get something like Mew going. Depending on what we top deck, we will figure that out. My opponent uses Tandem Unit. Probably going to grab another Raikou as well as another Mareep. Oh, they grab Miraidon as well as Raikou. Interesting. So let's see exactly what we can do. There's the useless Battle VIP Pass now. We're going to use the Artisan just to thin a card. The Artisan, we can grab the Mew, just so that way we have access to another card. And what we're going to do now, Cresselia is not going to be as useful. Instead, what we're going to do is attach to the Ralts. We'll play our own Iono. I do give my opponent some more cards, but I don't want to discard the reversal. And we do actually get access to Ultra Ball, which means Ultra Ball will allow us to grab that Mirage Step Kirlia. Which means what we can do now is we can Mirage Step, get 2 Kirlias out, and start building our board. And we actually have access to a 3rd Kirlia with Refinement, so not looking too bad at all. We can get rid of that Battle VIP Pass. We have some energy to accelerate, so things aren't looking too bad. Now my opponent is going to be able to take a KO, but we're going to have to figure out exactly what we can do. My opponent plays that Path to the Peak. Won't be too bad, but speaking of it, there is the Path to the Peak. We are going to be able to draw a lot of cards this coming turn. Also being able to promote the Mew, giving us potentially access to Rare Candy. So we just need to find that counter stadium, and we can go from there. So we do get access to Iono, which is perfect. We are going to use that Kirlia for Refinement, getting rid of the Battle VIP Pass. We do get Greninja. I am going to bench the Greninja, just because I do feel like I'll be able to get the counter stadium. And we do draw Rare Candy as well, so what we can do is we can Rare Candy one of the Ralts into a Gardevoir. We gain access to Shining Arcana. Shining Arcana can attach to the Gardevoir. We draw another Super Rod, unfortunately. So I think what we're going to do here, we'll play the Iono. Nothing really to bring back with that Super Rod at the moment. We get that Lost Vacuum, which is super huge, and we do actually gain access to another Kirlia as well. So we can actually draw a lot of cards this turn. Use the Lost Vacuum, getting rid of that Path to the Peak, which means that we have access to a ton of potential when it comes to what we can draw here. So we draw 2. We do get Fog Crystal. We'll use the Fog Crystal, grab an energy, discard the energy off of the Refinement, and then we also have access to Greninja. A lot of drawing we could do this game. And we do actually get Collapse Stadium as well. So looking at this, there's not too much that we're going to do. I think we're just going to pass. My opponent's going to go to 2. We are going to be able to take a knockout next turn, providing that we have access to attacking with the Shining Arcana. And we have the Collapse Stadium as well in order to counter the Path to the Peak. So should be in a very solid spot. We also have access to that Zacian later on, so there's the Electric Generator. My opponent whiffs, unfortunate for them, but they are going to be able to just attach. There is the Path to the Peak, as well as the Lightning Rondo. unfortunately, the path to the peak is going to cause us some problems. So my opponent does play 4 potentially. We do have one of our stadiums gone, the Lost Vacuum gone, so we are going to have to kind of play out our turns as best as we can. So my opponent is taking the prize card. Not too sure what my opponent is waiting for when it comes to it, but it's not the end of the world. My opponent is only going to be at 4 cards, so this is what we'll do. Bring up that Gardevoir, see how the next turns start to play out. So we will use that Shining Arcana, getting another Psychic Energy. We'll attach it to the Gardevoir, and unfortunately, we still have yet to see a Gardevoir EX. So there's the Gardevoir EX. So that means we can bench Zacian. We can actually play the Counter Stadium, and I'm gonna get rid of the Radiant Greninja. Just to leave the board open. We use that Refinement again, just to thin the deck. Drawing 2 more cards, using the last Refinement. And with the last Refinement, we'll get rid of the Level Ball. Drawing access to a Psychic Energy. So we're going to attach here, and then we'll go into the Gardevoir. So we do have access to actually put, let's see, we need 5 energy. So what we can do is we can attach 5 energy here. And we can leave ourselves in a spot to where we can attack with Zacian. We'll leave 1 in the discard just in case something like our Zacian gets brought up, or Kirlia or Gardevoir. But right now we're going to hit 210, and then we can go from there. My opponent is going to be able to access that experience share. We do have 2 Ionos gone. We know that we have 1 in the prizes, so potentially 1. I believe I play 3, so we'll be able to take our prizes. We do get the reversal energy, which means that we can Super Odd potentially get the Gardevoir back, and can reversal in order to take a KO. So my opponent has some big turns on what they are going to have to do. If they do play Path to the Peak down, we are in a bit of an awkward spot. It's going to be super tricky because we don't have an out to the stadium. We played the first stadium, and so we're just going to have to hope. There's the Lightning Energy on Miraidon. And if my opponent goes for the Photon Blaster, he'll be at 3. There's the Photon Blaster. And now we're in a super solid spot, because now what we can do is we can checkmate our opponent. And by checkmate, I mean that what we can do is we can search out an energy. We can play the Level Ball just to thin, see what's in the deck. So there's not too much that's in the deck. So what we're going to do, use that Refinement ability. We're going to draw 2 cards. We get the Ultra Ball, which is perfect. So now we can Super Odd, put back in the Gardevoir, and then we can also put back, we'll just put back the Ralt. We can Ultra Ball, getting rid of the Cresselia, as well as the Ralt. We can grab that Shining Arcana Gardevoir. We'll use the Refinement again, getting rid of that Psychic Energy. And we'd actually draw Boss's Orders, which could be useful for next turn as well. And if my opponent chooses to take a knockout on the Zacian, my opponent is going to be at 1 prize card and will still be behind, which means that the Reversal Energy is active. And we do actually have access to Shining Arcana again, just to keep thinning, so that way we have access to Super Odd, which means that we have the ability to get these Zacian. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ensure that we can take the knockout. So we do need 6 energy, I believe, because 5 is 210. So we will attach those 6 energy. And then we can attach 2 to the Gardevoir here. And I know that we have at least 1 left in the deck, so we kind of put our opponent in the checkmate position. So we will hit for that 60 plus 30, hitting 240, taking 2 prize cards. And now if my opponent chooses to take 1 prize, Zacian can swing. If my opponent chooses to take 2, the Gardevoir can swing, so we're in a super solid spot. And if something gets brought up, we have that 1 energy plus the 1 that's in our hand in order to retreat, so we are in a very fine position at the moment. Oh, there's the Miraidon going down. And due to us prematurely attaching the energy, it means that we're not in a terrible spot. So there is the escape rope. The escape rope, let's see. Providing that my opponent plays something like Iono, I'm going to bring up the Gardevoir anyways, because the Zacian can take the knockout, as I mentioned before. So there's my opponent bringing up the Zeraora. Zeraora being able to deal 60 damage to us. Not quite enough to take the knockout. And my opponent concedes. So with that being said, guys, I want to thank you for watching today's video. Thank you for viewing it and just enjoying the games. If you guys did enjoy it, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video.